So there's a tendency whenever you're playing these diddle timing exercises to have the accent taps sound different on drum 1 than when you're splitting it. So when you're playing crossover, this crossover hand has a tendency to be too soft. It tends to go like this. So it sounds like if you were to play it on one drum. Another tendency that tends to happen is there is an emphasis on the note after the accent that is crossing over. So for example, it would sound like this. So this kind of like a decrescendo at the left hand with that note right there. So when you're doing this crossover, focus on nice, even taps. And then one way you can do that is just extending this. So you can focus on the taps more instead of switching back and forth between the taps and the accents too quickly. Now, while doing these crossover variations, you certainly could do what I'm doing, where I'm doing an entire run through where it's all on 2 different drums. Or you could do every line different, every measure different, or just improvise as you're going to work on the different crossover variations. I'm doing them all the way through so I can really improve and focus on one type of crossover. You may have heard that there are some extra rim shots in there. It's not notated, but it's implied. You'll know as you play it more when you're supposed to insert them on, a diddle. That was called a joke. I'm specifically focusing on one thing, which is just this one motion, and I'm going slow to fast. And while I'm doing that, I'm taking notes mentally and going, okay, the second note of my left-hand diddle on these crossovers is not great. Going too fast. And so what I will do on the next 10-minute break is specifically focus on that left hand, because I'm already midway through just focusing on one thing. So the best recommendation that I can give if you have a short amount of time, like if you're taking the Pomodoro breaks, is just set a goal for that 10 minutes, work on that goal for the 10 minutes, and then anything else that is an error that pops, just kind of mentally or literally write it down, and then come back to it on your next 10-minute break, so that way you can work on that next time. This exercise, even though, again, I'm just doing it with the tenor sweeps around the worlds, you could do this with like flam drags. Just sit there and play flam drags for 10 minutes, and then on your next 10-minute break, maybe pick a different rudiment, or set it for like up to 160 or something, and it'll start at 40. There's also another variation of this called fast, slow, fast that does the opposite, where it starts fast, goes all the way down to 40, holds it at 40 for 4 measures, and then goes back up to whatever your starting tempo is. Again, I can't hear my metronome. It's kind of a problem when it's changing every 4 beats, and I'm trying to talk while doing it. Not too bad. Let's try faster. Still too heavy. A little late on that transition. So crossover, tap, tap. When working on something like this, where you really get some of the issues with tenors where it's like, So the issue is the tenor heights where like everything all of a sudden becomes like 12 and 9 instead of like 12 and 3 or 9 and 3, etc. So what I'm really going to focus on is getting the stick underneath out of the way. Because if your stick is up here, your taps are like, woo, it's like jumping a hurdle. Okay, so while I'm doing this, whatever hand is underneath, I'm really focused on keeping that low to the head. You can do this 4-2-1-0 pattern with any rudiments you come up with. Sit around with some friends, figure out your own variation. This is just the stock variation. Little flat there. Oh no! Oh, it was fine all the way up until literally the last rudiment, that shut cheese off the left. Here's a weird one. That was better. Yay! The reason why I'm choosing to work on these accent tap crossovers on the tenors is because yesterday when I was streaming and I was doing the diddle timing stuff with the crossovers, I was just noticing that the hand that was underneath was moving around a little bit too much while doing the crossover. So I want to keep this hand consistently in the same spot, and I just happen to move the other hand. So I don't want to like, woo, have both of them move in and out like this. I just want to have the hand that's moving over, doing the crossover, is the only one that's moving. This other one is just hanging out here, so none of this. While I was doing this, I was noticing that my right hand kind of started to turn at an angle and was like switching over almost to French grip. Not completely, but enough that it was noticeable. So I was trying to correct for that. But then the other thing that I was noticing is that I was starting too close to the edge and ending up too far away from here. So I was actually using more motion than I needed. What I needed to do was start a little bit further out and then close this gap just a little bit. So that's what I was like messing with on the fly, and you'll notice that it causes more rim clicks, and that's okay.